Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a figure whose career trajectory, it didn't just change the concept of fine dining.
Oh, not at all.
It arguably defined what a modern, globally influential celebrity chef even looks like today. We're talking about David Chang.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is we aren't simply analyzing a chef who got successful. We're looking at someone who systematically mastered the established high-pressure world of culinary arts.
Right.
We're talking 5 James Beard Awards, multiple Michelin stars, serious credentials.
The highest level.
But at the same time, he very publicly rejected the limitations, the stiffness, maybe the pretension of that whole system. He built this empire, Momofuku, that stretches from these tiny, secretive 2 Michelin-starred tasting menus all the way to, like, fast food fried chicken chains in sports stadiums.
And Netflix shows, print media, he's everywhere.
A dominant, multifaceted presence. It's quite something.
What stands out immediately in our source material, really dig into this, is just the sheer breadth of his influence. Born 1977, founder of the Momofuku Group.
Yeah.
And the name itself, Momofuku. It's interesting, right? His website says it means lucky peach.
Which is a nice touch, yeah. A nod to his heritage.
It is. But it also, apparently quite intentionally, references Momofuku Ando.
The inventor of instant noodles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So right there, from the name, you get this duality, this embrace of high-end technique and the most common, maybe lowbrow food product imaginable.
That's it. That tension. That's the core of his brand, isn't it? The oscillation between the elite and the accessible.
Totally.
And that's what makes his career so compelling to analyze. So our deep dive today, we're really focused on looking at every facet of that tension.
Right.
We're tracing his biography, the history of his restaurants, the revolutionary start, but also, importantly, the business volatility later on.
Yeah, the closures too.
The closures, definitely.
Right.
His huge media presence, the unique literary projects like Lucky Peach, and, yeah, the controversies he stirred up.
And the mission for you, listening, is to trace that journey from this, like, unconventional student who wasn't even studying food.
Religious studies, of all things.
Right. And then a frustrated fine dining cook to this global icon who's still launching new stuff, even after closing some legendary places.
He never seems to stop.
So let's start at the beginning. Because his foundations, educationally and professionally, they're maybe the most surprising part of the whole story. Okay. So when you look at his early life, there's really no obvious sign pointing towards Michelin stars and Netflix deals. David Chang was born in Arlington County, Virginia. His parents, Wu Chun-hai, or Sherry, and Chang Jin-pil, Joseph P. Chang later on, they emigrated from Korea back in the 1960s.
And the sources get specific, don't they, about where in Korea?
They do. His father was born in Pyongyang, his mother in Kaesong. That adds a whole layer of, history and migration context to his background.
It really does. But despite that specific history, he grew up mostly in Vienna, Virginia. Pretty standard American suburban upbringing in many ways.
Except for the golf.
Ah, yes, the golf. He wasn't just playing casually, he was a serious competitive junior golfer.
Which requires
What?
intense focus, discipline.
Totally. Intense focus, probably a lot of solitary practice, competitive drive, performing under pressure. Think about it.
Yeah.
That kind of ingrained competitiveness honed on a golf course, you have to think that transferred directly into the high-stakes, kind of zero-sum world of professional kitchens later.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But then comes this, major detour in his education.
Yeah.
After Georgetown Prep, he goes to Trinity College in Hartford.
Right.
And he doesn't major in business or hospitality or anything remotely food-related. He majors in religious studies.
Which is such a stark contrast, isn't it, to the eventual chaos and commerce of running a global restaurant group.
It really is.
And you could argue, I think convincingly, that this non-traditional background is absolutely key to understanding why he became such an iconoclast later.
How so?
Well, think about religious studies. You spend years analyzing belief systems, dogma, tradition, human structures, why rules exist, how they're maintained, and crucially, how they get dismantled or reinvented. So he didn't come up through that rigid, very hierarchical European culinary tradition. He kind of approached it as an intellectual outsider.
Ah, so he was already primed to question the rules.
Exactly. Perfectly prepared to question the dogma, the structure of what a fine dining restaurant had to be. He was ready to build something new.
That makes a lot of sense. So after college, the path is still a bit twisty.
Yeah, definitely meandering for a while. which, is pretty relatable for a lot of people in their 20s trying to figure things out.
Sure is. He taught English in Japan for a bit.
Bussed tables. Even did some finance jobs in New York City.
Right, finance. Seems like he was trying different things. It wasn't until 2000 that he actually made the formal jump into cooking.
Yeah, enrolling at the French Culinary Institute, FCI, in New York.
So he started formal training relatively late, 23?
Around then, yeah. Which meant his immersion had to be pretty intense right away. While he was at FCI, he worked part-time at Mercer Kitchen. But maybe the really formative gig was the 2 years he spent answering phones at Tom Colicchio's place, Kraft.
Answering phones, not cooking.
Answering phones, which sounds mundane maybe, but think about it. You're not in the back prepping veg. You're at the nerve center of the front of house.
Hearing everything.
Everything. The demands, the expectations, sometimes the sheer pretension of the clientele at a top-tier New York spot. He was basically observing the whole system from the front lines.
That's a fascinating perspective. Then he wanted more hands-on experience, right? Went back to Asia.
Exactly. He wanted to master the craft, so he went back to Japan, worked at a small soba shop first, learning that precision, that focus.
Right.
Then moved on to a restaurant inside the Park Hyatt Hotel in Tokyo. More high-end experience.
So he's getting this blend of influences now.
Absolutely critical. It's like this synthesis happening in his mind. He's got the rigid French techniques from FCI, and now he's adding the precise, focused, sometimes quite austere techniques of Japanese cuisine. So when he comes back to the U.S., he lands a job at Café Boulou, which was huge for him.
Why Boulou specifically?
Because his idol, the chef Alex Lee, had worked there. So for Chang, working at Boulou was like reaching the pinnacle of that traditional French-American training path.
He'd done the work, mastered the system.
He'd climbed the ladder.
And yet, this is where the big shift happens. The sources are really clear on this. They explicitly say he grew completely dissatisfied with the whole fine dining scene.
Right. Total rejection.
So here's the key question then, isn't it? How did that specific dissatisfaction, that feeling of this isn't it, how did that directly fuel the identity of Momofuku?
Well, the realization wasn't that the food in fine dining was bad. I mean, technically it was brilliant.
Sure.
The rejection was cultural, structural. He saw a system that felt creatively stifling, maybe overly precious, obsessed with arbitrary rules, dominated by an old guard that valued tradition over invention. And when you spend years mastering a system, only to find it feels kind of hollow or just not for you, the most powerful response, the revolutionary response, is to build something that's the complete opposite.
So he wasn't going to open just another fancy place with tablecloths and sommeliers.
No way. He was going to take the quality, the precision, the technique he learned at places like Boulud and Kraft, and jam it into a humble, loud, kind of rough-around-the-edges noodle shop in the East Village.
That's the core DNA right there.
That's the foundational, revolutionary DNA of Momofuku, demanding excellence, but without any of the usual fine dining baggage, rejecting the need for silence or reverence or fancy decor. It was basically like culinary punk rock.
I like that. Culinary punk rock. Okay, so that sets the stage for the actual launch. So 2004, the revolution kicks off. Momofuku Noodle Bar opens in the East Village.
Yeah, small place, right? Strategically located where the rent was maybe a bit lower.
Definitely. And it was noisy, apparently quite basic inside, but it had this immediate explosive impact, partly because of those intentional constraints we talked about.
And the name again, Momofuku. Lucky Peach. Optimistic, whimsical.
Right.
But also nodding to Momofuku Ando, inventor of instant ramen. It signals two things right off the bat. One, we're serious about Asian-inspired food, maybe ramen specifically. And two, we absolutely refuse to be precious about it.
High technique, comfort food target.
Exactly. High technique applied to comfort food. Genius positioning.
And the food itself, the hits were like immediate, unforgettable.
Oh, yeah. The Noodle Bar's pork ramen, obviously elevated, incredible broth, quality ingredients, and crucially, the Momofuku pork buns. They became instant icons.
The pork bun, let's talk about that for a second. Why was that so impactful?
It was just pure genius in its simplicity and its execution. It took a familiar, simple Asian street food idea, the steamed bun, but Chang elevated it. Used clearly superior ingredients, focused on a signature preparation of the pork belly, often really savory, fatty, perfectly cooked.
So it was familiar but better.
Way better. And it wasn't just popular, it became a cultural artifact. It defined that whole decade's trend of street food meeting fine dining technique.
Yeah.
Instantly recognizable, incredibly addictive.
And copied everywhere.
Ceaselessly copied, which is the ultimate sign you've created something truly resonant.
So Noodle Bar's a hit. The expansion must have followed pretty quickly.
It did. It showed this wasn't just a one-off fluke. This model worked. So 2006, just 2 years later, Momofuku Ssam Bar opens nearby.
Still East Village.
Still close by, yeah. And it was immediately acclaimed. The Infatuation, for example, gave it a really high rating, praised the menu, which moved beyond just ramen for being, quote, inventive, exciting, and different.
So a broader menu.
Yeah.
Large format dishes, maybe.
Exactly. Things like the Ssam, the large pork shoulder dish, more creative takes on Asian flavors, still in that casual, high-energy setting.
And this success starts getting him mainstream recognition.
Big time. Chang won the James Beard Award for Best Chef NYC in 2008, specifically for his work at Ssam Bar.
Okay, that's huge. The establishment he was supposedly rebelling against is now giving him their top awards.
That's the irony, right? But it proved the quality was undeniable. You couldn't ignore what he was doing, even if it broke all the old rules.
But then comes the real statement piece. The place that perfectly encapsulated his whole high-low thing while proving he could play at the absolute highest level, Momofuku
Yeah. Opened in 2008. Tiny place, like extremely exclusive, just 12 seats, tasting menu only.
12 seats. How did you even get in?
Well, the way you got in was almost as revolutionary as the food. This is a critical point. We're talking 2008, well before online reservations were the norm everywhere.
Right.
Coast was strictly online only. First come, first served. You had to book exactly 10 days in advance, right when the system opened. It completely eliminated the old system, calling the restaurant, knowing the maitre d', pulling strings. It turned getting a reservation into this competitive digital sport.
Like trying to get concert tickets.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
It created this unique form of exclusivity based on speed and digital access. Not necessarily wealth or connections. It sort of democratized access in theory.
But created insane scarcity in practice.
Intense, maddening scarcity. That system itself was pure disruption. And honestly, it helped pave the way for modern reservation platforms like TikTok, Resy. It fundamentally changed how high-end restaurants manage demand.
And the food must have lived up to the hype.
Oh, it did. The quality matched the hype and the accolades followed immediately. Momofuku got awarded 2 Michelin stars in 2009.
2 stars. Within a year.
Within about a year, yeah. And remarkably, it kept those 2 stars every single year until it eventually closed in 2023. Over a decade.
Incredible consistency.
Plus, it won the James Beard Award for Best New Restaurant in 2009. So getting 2 Michelin stars that fast, with that reservation system, serving unconventional food, it wasn't just success, it was a total validation of his entire anti-establishment approach.
While Ko is hitting this peak fine dining success, he's also branching out in a totally different direction, right? Dessert?
Simultaneously, yeah. He expanded Ssam Bar physically in 2008, and he brought in his colleague Christina Tosi to run the pastry program.
Christina Tosi. A huge name now in her own right.
Absolutely. And that program quickly spun off into its own thing. Momofuku Milk Bar.
And Gar. Also iconic.
Equally radical, really, but in the dessert space. Tosi wasn't doing classic French patisserie. She was creating desserts inspired by, childhood treats, American home baking, really unorthodox flavor combinations.
Like what?
Soft serve, pies, cookies, cakes, but using ingredients like milk powder, cornflakes, pretzels. Her signature is the crack pie, which is now just called milk bar pie. Yeah. The cereal milk ice cream, the compost cookies with everything thrown in, they were so unique and so perfectly suited for retail.
They felt very different, very branded.
Exactly. And the sources note, by May 2009, they were already in the process of trademarking those names and concepts, which shows remarkable business foresight.
Recognizing the IP value early on.
Yeah, seeing that these personal, fun, reproducible concepts were valuable intellectual property, that they could be the basis for a future packaged goods empire, which is exactly what happened with Milk Bar.
So before the decade even closes, he's got Noodle Bar, Ssam Bar, the 2-star Co, Milk Bar spinning off, and then he moves into publishing.
Solidifying his role as a thought leader, not just a chef. October 2009, he publishes the Momofuku cookbook with Peter Meehan, the former New York Times food writer.
Was it just recipes?
It had recipes, yeah, often quite detailed and challenging ones. But it was more than that. It was highly anticipated, seen as a statement. It cemented the idea that Momofuku wasn't just serving food. They were creating a whole culinary philosophy that people wanted to study and try to replicate.
Okay, so the 2010s arrive. Chang isn't just the revolutionary New York chef anymore. He's pivoting, right? Becoming the head of a truly global empire.
That's the big shift. The model changes from those small, sort of constrained East Village spots to much larger, more ambitious projects, highly diversified. And these required serious capital, serious brand leverage.
That intense early success must have given him the runway for that.
Exactly. It provided the immediate capital and, crucially, the brand recognition needed to take these huge financial risks, often internationally, where the market maybe felt less saturated for his style.
So where did he go first?
Well, first, another NYC spot in May 2010, Mapesh in Midtown Manhattan, trying to translate the Momofuku vibe for a more corporate crowd.
Not go.
Mixed results, apparently. It ended up closing in 2018, so not every expansion landed perfectly.
Right. But the first big international jump, that was Australia, wasn't it?
Sydney, Australia, announced in 2011, opened in October. Momofuku Safebo, his first restaurant outside the U.S.
Why Sydney?
He was quoted around then saying he'd just fallen in love with Australia, called the scene fresh and energetic.
Okay.
And that energy definitely translated into success. Sabo was located in the Star City Casino, and it got massive critical acclaim right away.
How acclaimed?
For our listeners maybe less familiar with the Australian system, the sources note it got 3 hats from the Sydney Morning Herald Good Food Guide.
Which is like their version of Michelin stars, basically, the top of
Exactly. 3 hats is the pinnacle. And it was named Best New Restaurant in its first year, so it proved the Momofuku philosophy could travel, it could compete, and win against established local players on a different continent.
Wow. Okay, so Sydney's a hit. Then Canada.
Then Toronto in 2012. And this was a really large-scale venture, not just one restaurant.
What was it?
It was this multi-concept installation inside a, dramatic 3-story glass cube building. A real architectural statement.
I'm trying to make a splash.
Big splash. It housed the signature noodle bar concept, plus 2 more ambitious restaurants called Daishu and Shutu, and a bar called Nikai. Multiple experiences under one roof.
And how did the Toronto project fare? Because that sounds complex.
It illustrates that business volatility we mentioned earlier, even during the expansion phase. The noodle bar concept, robust, stayed open.
Okay.
But the higher-end concepts, Daishu and Shuchu, they struggled more with longevity, closed in 2017.
Replaced later.
Yeah, replaced by a different concept, Kojin, in 2018. So it showed the core Momofuku brand was strong, but the more specialized, maybe larger format concepts within the group, still vulnerable, required constant tweaking and reassessment.
And the diversification wasn't just about geography, right? He started moving into different types of food service.
Critically important move, yeah. A deliberate shift towards scalability. In 2015, he launches Fuku.
Fuku, the fried chicken sandwich chain.
Exactly. A direct, calculated move into the QSR, quick service restaurant category, leveraging the Momofuku brand's cool factor and quality reputation for mass market appeal. High volume sales.
And Fuku seems to have found its niche, especially in certain venues.
Incredibly portable concept.
Yeah.
The sources point out its current locations, numerous spots in major sports stadiums and arenas, Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, Yankee Stadium, Citi Field in New York, Madison Square Garden.
High traffic locations.
Exactly. He realized quality fried chicken sandwich plus Momofuku name, potent formula for securing these high volume contracts. It's a completely different revenue stream than, say, the tiny high-touch Momofuku Co.
He was also looking at technology and delivery very early, wasn't he?
Way ahead of the curve. In 2016, launched Ando, called it his first digital-only restaurant.
Meaning?
Delivery only. Took orders strictly via an app operating in Midtown East New York. This was a super early, aggressive focus on the delivery market, long before ghost kitchens became mainstream buzzwords.
So he's constantly experimenting with the how of dining, not just the what.
Always. Restless innovator. Predicting that shift towards third-party delivery. And around the same time, 2016, he partners with Impossible Foods.
The plant-based meat company.
Yeah, one of the big Silicon Valley food tech startups then. He started preparing their Impossible Burger, put it on the menu at Momofuku Nishi.
Which was a big deal back then.
Huge deal. It showed he was willing to embrace this highly experimental, potentially sustainable food technology and integrate it right into his high-profile restaurant menus. Cemented his image as a kind of food futurist.
And the expansion kept going west, too, right?
Right.
L.A.?
2018, Majordomo opens in Los Angeles, his first big West Coast restaurant venture.
So this whole period, 2010 to roughly 2019, it's just relentless expansion. Global reach, new concepts, tech focus.
Relentless is the word. But if we connect this back to the bigger picture, this cycle of rapid, often very expensive expansion, it sets the stage for the consolidation that followed, especially post-2020. It really illustrates the intense business volatility facing even the most successful high-end restaurant groups, particularly in major cities. It's the harsh economic reality behind the glamorous empire facade.
Absolutely. And then COVID-19 hits, March 2020.
And everything changes. Momofuku, like everyone else, temporarily closes all its restaurants.
But some didn't reopen.
No. Later that year, the permanent closures started. Momofuku Nishi in New York, Momofuku CCDC in Washington, D.C.
The Sydney restaurant, too.
Seibo closed in 2021. Even the Vegas projects he'd opened relatively recently, Majordomo Meat and Fish, Moon Palace, they closed in 2022.
And then came the really big symbolic closures in 2023.
Yeah. Momofuku Ssäm Bar, the place that won him Best Chef NYC back in '08, closed September 30th.
And then Co.
And then Momofuku Co., the 2 Michelin-starred institution, the reservation disruptor, closed its doors November 4th, 2023, after holding those stars for, 14 years?
Closing, that feels like more than just a business decision. It feels like a statement.
It absolutely was a profound statement. It signals, I think, a definitive move away from that specific model, the unsustainable, super high-cost, high-pressure, tiny tasting menu restaurant.
Why unsustainable?
Think about the economics. Co required extreme labor density, tons of highly skilled staff for just 12 seats, incredibly high ingredient costs, very little volume to offset that. Post-pandemic, the math just likely didn't work anymore or wasn't worth the immense stress.
So the closures reflect the strategic shift.
A pragmatic shift, yeah. Towards concepts that are either mass market, like Fuku, or focused on consumer packaged goods, CPG, stemming from Milk Bar, or things like his Chili Crunch product. More scalable, less reliant on tiny margins and intense nightly service.
But he's not stopping, is he? Still planning new things.
That restless energy seems undimmed. Future concepts are already announced. Peach Palace at JFK Airport, Super Peach in Century City, LA.
Airport and mall locations.
Yeah.
High traffic again.
Exactly. The expansion continues, but it looks targeted now, focused on high traffic, potentially high scalability locations, reflecting probably the hard economic lessons learned over the last few years.
So while this whole empire is expanding and then consolidating, Chang himself is undergoing another transformation. He's not just the chef behind the scenes. He becomes a major media personality.
Seamless transition, really. He wasn't content just being a successful restaurateur. He leveraged his public image, his unique perspective, to become a cultural commentator, a writer, a TV star, especially in the 2010s.
How did that start? Guest spots on cooking shows?
Yeah, he built credibility that way first. Guest judging on things like Top Chef, All Stars, MasterChef Australia, participating in the established reality TV hierarchy.
Okay.
But the real key to his media evolution, I think, was his relationship with Anthony Bourdain.
Bourdain was a big champion of his, wasn't he?
Huge champion. Bourdain really saw something in Chang's intellectual approach, his willingness to be vulnerable and opinionated. And Bourdain executive produced the PBS series The Mind of a Chef.
Right. Chang hosted the first season of that, starting in 2012.
And that show was a crucial pivot point. It wasn't just another cooking competition. It was more philosophical, exploring the creative process, the anxiety, the culture around food, often quite self-deprecating. It set the stage for bigger platforms.
Enter Netflix.
Enter Netflix, big time. Chang created, produced, and starred in several series for them. The most notable, probably, was Ugly Delicious. Ran from 2018 to 2020.
That show was huge. Why did it resonate so much?
Because it wasn't about perfect plating or immaculate technique. It framed food discussions through culture, history, debates about authenticity, and often through Chang's own very personal anxieties about, being an outsider, about what's good food.
It gave people permission to love food that wasn't necessarily pretty or high-end.
Exactly. It celebrated flavor and story over aesthetics. Hugely relatable.
What else did he do in Netflix?
Followed that up with Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner in 2019. More travel-focused, using food as a backdrop for these intimate conversations with other celebrities, Seth Rogen, Kate McKinnon, people like that. Okay. Then in 2021, The Next Thing You Eat. a documentary series where he positioned himself again as that food futurist, talking lab-grown meat, ghost kitchens, cutting-edge food tech.
His media footprint is just incredibly wide then, even into scripted stuff.
It really is. He had an expanded role in season 2 of HBO's Treem, the New Orleans drama. He popped up in IFC's documentary Now, in their brilliant parody of Jiro Dreams of Sushi.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And he even played a fictionalized version of himself in the Apple TV Plus comedy loot. His ability to slide between serious documentary and self-aware comedy, it shows a really sophisticated understanding of media, how to package his persona.
And then there was the non-culinary win, the game show.
Ah, yes, 2020. He became the first celebrity ever to win the $1 million top prize on the U.S. version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
That's amazing.
And he donated the entire $1 million to the Southern Smoke Foundation,
which helps food and beverage workers.
Exactly. Workers in crisis. That moment was huge for his public image. Solidified him as someone with, yes, intellectual depth, but also a real sense of community responsibility, giving back to the industry.
So it's conquering TV, but he also made a big splash in print, right? With Lucky Peach.
Not just a chef, not just a TV host. He became a chronicler, a critic of the food world through print, too. Co-founded the quarterly food magazine Lucky Peach in 2011 with Peter Meehan again.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. It reveals his larger cultural ambition. Lucky Peach wasn't published by, like, Condé Nast or some big food media company.
No, it was published by McSweeney's,
the independent literary publisher, known for being quirky, intellectual, design-focused.
That was a statement in itself. It signaled right away. This magazine aims higher than just recipes and restaurant reviews. It's going to engage serious literary talent, treat food writing as culture, as art.
And it did, didn't it? It felt different.
It absolutely was a masterpiece of food journalism for its time. The first issue, themed entirely around ramen. That's focus. It attracted incredible talent. Bourdain wrote for it, Ruth Reichel. It was intelligent, visually stunning, often really funny and irreverent. But it also got into the gritty realities of kitchen life. It elevated food writing.
Did it sell well?
Huge success initially. Issue 2, themed The Sweet Spot, hit number 3 on the New York Times bestsellers list for paperback nonfiction. That's massive for a literary food journal.
So why did it stop? It ran for 25 issues until 2017.
Yeah, it ran for a good while. Its closure, though, probably signaled a shift in the media landscape, proved that even with superstar talent and critical acclaim, that kind of experimental, high-production value print journalism was becoming really challenging to sustain financially.
A familiar story in publishing, unfortunately.
Very. So after the magazine closed, he shifted to more personal publishing. Released his memoir, Eat a Peach, in 2020.
Which was highly anticipated. Was it just about food?
Oh no, much deeper than that. It was a really raw, quite profound look at his personal life, his struggles with mental health, bipolar disorder, anger issues, and the immense pressures and anxieties of the restaurant industry. Very revealing.
And then another cookbook.
Yeah, but a very different kind. Cooking at Home, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying About Recipes and Love My Microwave in 2021.
Love that title. Seems very on brand again.
Totally. Pushing back against complexity, emphasizing simplicity, practicality for the everyday home cook. Using your microwave, it showed him constantly reassessing what cooking means for a modern audience. Still innovating, just in a different way.
And now, 2024, he's back on Netflix, but in a totally different format again.
Dinner Time Live with David Chang. Alive. Well, nearly live. Late-night talk show format.
A talk show.
Yeah. Using food and making dinner as the backdrop for celebrity conversations. It's yet another pivot, another format he's trying to conquer. It really underscores his continued dedication to media, perhaps even over-focusing solely on physical restaurants at this stage.
Okay, so we've talked about the restaurants, the media and empire. Let's talk about his public image itself, because early on, it was very carefully crafted, wasn't it? The whole bad boy fine dining thing.
Oh yeah, that was definitely part of the initial appeal and buzz. Epicurious described him as having a bad boy attitude. And it wasn't just talk, it was reflected in how he ran the places.
Like at Noodle Bar.
Exactly. Those specific operational choices were part of his rebellion. No reservations whatsoever creating those lines, that hype. And, very controversially at the time, absolutely no vegetarian options initially.
Wow. That's a statement.
Huge statement. It was a clear signal against that traditional fine dining mantra of the customer is always right, or bending over backwards for every dietary request. It basically said, this is our vision, this is our food, take it or leave it, come to us on our terms.
And he wasn't afraid to speak his mind about others in the industry either.
Not at all. He wasn't afraid to take public shots. The most famous example probably was in 2009. He caused a pretty big stir with comments about California chefs.
What did he say?
He told Anthony Bourdain famously something like, "They don't manipulate food, they just put figs on a plate," dismissing that whole farm-to-table, ingredient-focused ethos.
Ouch. That must have ruffled some feathers.
Oh, definitely. That kind of blunt, maybe aggressive honesty, undeniably part of his brand, it kept him at the center of the conversation, even if it created friction.
Was it genuine opinion, do you think? Or was it also like a calculated media strategy, build the brand?
Probably a bit of both, right? Hard to untangle. But regardless, it worked. It cemented his image as this outspoken, iconoclastic New Yorker shaking things up.
Which makes the contrast with his philanthropic work really interesting. That bad boy image versus his community roles.
It's a fascinating tension because he is seriously involved in combating food insecurity, serves on the Food Council at City Harvest, the Culinary Council at Food Bank for New York City. These are major hunger relief organizations.
Focused on local need in New York.
Exactly. And he's also on the board of trustees at MoFad, the Museum of Food and Drink in NYC.
Which is about food history and culture.
Right, so it shows this deep commitment to the intellectual side, the societal role of food, that goes way beyond just running restaurants for profit.
But that commitment to community and his business side, they collided pretty spectacularly in 2024, didn't they? With the whole Chili Crunch trademark thing.
Oh boy, yeah. That became a major PR headache for Momofuku. And it perfectly captured the complexities, maybe the moral hazards, that arise when a brand like his, built on being disruptive, moves heavily into the consumer packaged goods (CPG) market.
What happened exactly?
Momofuku started sending cease and desist letters to other companies, mostly smaller businesses, some of them Asian American owned, who were using the term Chili Crunch or Chili Crunch on their products.
Because Momofuku had trademarked Chili Crunch.
They had the trademark, yes, but the optics were terrible. It looked like this big corporation, led by the guy who used to be the anti-establishment rebel, was now bullying small entrepreneurs making a similar product. Especially sensitive, given the shared Asian heritage aspect for some of the brands.
What was Momofuku's defense?
They argued, in a statement to the LA Times, that the trademark wasn't meant to stifle competition, but was necessary for legal differentiation in a crowded market. They said they intentionally picked Chili Crunch, specifically to stand out from the broader, maybe more generic Chili Crisp category.
Which legally might make sense in CPG. If a name is too descriptive, it's hard to defend.
Technically, yes. That's often the challenge. They were likely trying to secure a unique legal identity for their product in a booming category. But the public reaction wasn't about trademark law nuance. It was overwhelmingly negative. People saw it as hypocritical, as punching down.
So how do they handle it?
It turned into, really, a masterclass in modern crisis management. They realized quickly that brand authenticity and community goodwill were way more valuable in the long run than trying to legally enforce that specific trademark term.
So they backed down?
Completely. On April 12, 2024, Chang himself went on his own podcast, The Dave Chang Show, and issued a very public, very direct apology. Said Momofuku hadn't intended to upset people, acknowledged the feedback, and crucially, announced they would no longer attempt to enforce the Chili Crunch trademark.
Wow, that's a fast retreat.
Very fast. It showed that even someone with his level of fame and media control has to be incredibly responsive to public sentiment, especially to the community he came from and often represents. Brand perception trumped legal strategy.
So through all of this,
Yeah.
the expansion, the closures, the media fame, the controversies, the official awards kept coming, right?
Consistently. The industry recognition never really stopped. He got 5 James Beard Foundation awards between 2007 and 2014 alone.
Covering the whole spectrum.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Rising Star Chef early on, then Best Chef NYC for Ssam Bar, Best New Restaurant for Co., and eventually the big one, Outstanding Chef for the whole group's impact.
And recognition beyond just the food world, too.
Definitely. Time magazine named him one of their 100 most influential people way back in 2010. That shows his cultural impact transcended the kitchen early on.
So his career, when you look back, it's this incredible balancing act.
It really is. Maintaining that world-class fine dining pedigree while constantly disrupting industry norms, pushing boundaries, and somehow always ensuring his brand stays centered on his own restless, outspoken, complex personality. #outro. So yeah, we've traced David Chang's evolution. From, competitive junior golfer and religious studies major.
Which still feels wild.
Right. Through that intense culinary training, becoming a 2 Michelin star winner, a successful publisher, host of multiple major Netflix shows, his career is just defined by this restless, almost aggressive energy and this unique ability he has to synthesize really high-level, serious cuisine with concepts that are incredibly approachable, often inspired by street food, and highly, highly marketable.
He didn't just create a restaurant group. He really did define an attitude, didn't he? Pushing back against that perceived stiffness, that hierarchy of the old culinary world.
Absolutely. Inviting high technique into casual, loud settings, making excellence feel less exclusive, maybe.
Yeah. But as we saw, this whole glamorous structure, it still exists within these intense, sometimes brutal, volatile business realities. The closures of of Ssam Bar, these iconic flagships.
It illustrates that perfectly. Superstar status, James Beard Awards, Michelin stars. None of that exempts you from the fundamental economic pressures of the industry, especially when you're committed to high labor costs, high-quality ingredients, particularly in the post-2020 world.
His journey is also just a masterclass in leveraging a personal brand, right, into so many different successful ventures.
Totally. Whether it's stadium fast food with Fuku, a digital delivery app like Ando, way ahead of its time, or a prestigious literary magazine like Lucky Peach.
So he's constantly shown that if a format, whether it's a specific type of fine dining, a magazine, even a physical restaurant location, if it becomes constraining, either creatively or financially.
He moves on. He reinvents the model or just walks away and starts something new. The pivot we're seeing now towards CPG, towards more scalable concepts like Fuku, it feels like a very strategic evolution, away from relying solely on that high-risk, high-artistry restaurant model.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, listening. David Chang's genius, his entire career, has consistently thrived on change, on disruption, maybe even on a degree of chaos. Scarcity was part of the co-model. His success has often involved dismantling the very structures he himself built.
Constant reinvention.
So what happens now? What happens when a figure so defined by that constant restless change, especially in the volatile world of physical restaurants, is now focusing at least partly on the established, repetitive daily grind of a nightly live talk show like Dinner Time Live?
It's a great question. Does his creative, disruptive energy find a new outlet within that TV structure? New constraints to push against? Or is it a format that, by its very nature, steady, predictable, needing to please a broad audience night after night, might inevitably constrain the very restlessness, the desire for the next big thing that made him David Chang in the first place?
Something to think about.